Hi, Mike.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today.
Sure.
This is for our latest installment of LP In Depth. Today, we're going to talk about the High Republic. So, we figured Mike, our editorial director for Star Wars, would be a great guest to have. And since Rebecca is just coming back from vacation, that would give her one more day off. But um, we're going to talk a little bit about the High Republic. But before we get into what we think and how it affects Star Wars moving forward, and even, dare I say, the Walt Disney Company, I want to share their trailer of the High Republic that came out that kind of shares what Disney's perspective on the whole publishing initiative is. So here you go.
We're finding ourselves at a very exciting moment with the Skywalker saga coming to an end. We're at a place of what's next for Star Wars. One of the things we've always done is be able to use our franchise platforms to explore the creative potential in the Star Wars galaxy. And so, what if publishing was more of an incubation place and bring in great talent and just let their imaginations roam free? We put together a really unique writer's room where we had diverse voices with very different opinions about Star Wars.
We all love Star Wars, but we're all coming at it from very different places.
This has been a very free environment for everybody to just throw things out there.
We've all done lots of storytelling, but this is unique and really special.
The idea that this thing has been simmering for so long.
It's the secret history of the galaxy.
Yep, it goes way back to the beginning of Star Wars.
We gave them essentially a blank slate. What would you like to tell?
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice.
A line that we've been hearing since 1977, and we thought, what does that look like?
It is a golden age where there's much more peace and calm in the galaxy. So we're calling it the High Republic.
The description that we've used for the Jedi of this era is that they are the Jedi Knights of the Round Table.
But Star Wars isn't just about Jedi, and we will tell stories of new smugglers, new scoundrels, new bounty hunters.
The threat and the tension really comes from the Republic's borders, because the Republic does not extend from one side of the galaxy to the other.
It's a bit of a Wild West new frontier. We see a different kind of Jedi that patrols the frontiers and is more of a Texas Ranger.
We're now bringing in concept artists, illustrators, and visualists, the same way that you would when you're making a movie.
We even had Ian McKay come down and just do sketch after sketch for us. When you have the guy who designed the look for Darth Maul sketching Jedi for you, it doesn't get any cooler than this.
The scale of this initiative is really new for us. We're going to have stories for adults and teens and kids.
We're building this out simultaneously across multiple publishers. It gives us the ability to tell vast interconnected stories across multiple years. There will be a core group of heroes that will expand over time. There'll be villains.
Our main villain are the group called the Nile. We kind of like to refer to them as Space Vikings.
Their motto is, you can't take it with you, but we can take it from you. Our story starts with what we're calling the Great Disaster.
It wouldn't be Star Wars without adventure. And there's definitely a series of events that will spin the galaxy into a dangerous new direction, and it'll give the opportunity for heroes to rise up.
The cool thing about this is that there's going to be a story for every Star Wars fan. It's really fun to be able to keep readers on their toes. This era is ripe for storytelling. The eureka moment was the question, what scares the Jedi? And that made us all go, ooh, something wicked this way comes.
So that's the trailer. We should mention that the trailer ends saying coming August 2020. Um, much like many things we've talked about, that didn't happen. But now it will launch on January 5th. And Mike had the opportunity to review 3 of the books, as well as an interview roundtable with a whole slew of people. So we're lucky to have his perspective on it. But before we get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about how it's set up. And the books start with a crawl because it's a Star Wars thing. So the galaxy is at peace, ruled by the glorious Republic and protected by the noble and wise Jedi Knights. As a symbol of all that is good, the Republic is about to launch the Starlight Beacon into the far reaches of the Outer Rim. This new space station will serve as a ray of hope for all to see. But just as a magnificent renaissance spreads throughout the Republic, so does a frightening new adversary. Now the guardians of peace and justice must face a threat to themselves, the galaxy, and the Force itself. So, as it kind of mentions, this takes place in a new era of Star Wars. So, the beginning of the book, they talk about the High Republic, and then it sectioned off what we know from Star Wars into different sections. The Fall of the Jedi, which is the prequels, plus Clone Wars. Reign of the Empire, which is a new-ish era between those first 2 trilogies, which includes Solo Star Wars Story, but also the Bad Batch coming to Disney+. Age of Rebellion, the sort of original trilogy era, the New Republic from Mando, and Rise of the First Order, which is essentially the sequel trilogy. So this takes place 200 years before the Star Wars we know. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, and I know when the title, The High Republic, was first announced, it made me think of the Old Republic, which from the Legends timeline, Legends canon, was thousands and thousands of years before the original trilogy. So this doesn't go back quite as far as that. It's just a couple hundred years prior to the Phantom Menace, to the prequel. So we're seeing the Jedi just rewinded a couple centuries from there, and the like they said in that video, the Jedi are at their height. The galaxy is largely at peace. The Republic is expanding still into the Outer Rim and stuff. But yeah, that's where it picks up.
And to me, I guess the way I think about it, and tell me if I'm wrong, is kind of like, they always talk about how Star Wars has that grungy lived-in feel. Well, you're getting a little bit less of that lived-in feel because everything's newer. Those spaceships that we know are newer. It's kind of like an emerging country where they don't have the sort of lived-in time yet, so everything's built up new. It'll get there, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means, time marches on. But sort of what we would almost like, I feel like this is what the people in the prequel era, or maybe even the original trilogy, would view as like the good old days. I know we kind of thought of as like the time of the prequels is kind of like before the dark times, but you also get the sense there that there's just like an overgrown bureaucracy. People are getting frustrated. It's not quite, but there's also still a threat. So before we get into the individual titles, can you explain basically what is, so it's a publishing initiative. So it's just like books spread across different types and publishers and all that?
Yeah, up until about a week and a half ago, we thought that this was going to be exclusively a publishing initiative spread out across a series of novels for different age ranges, and then a series of comic books. Actually, 2 series of comic books, one for older readers and one for a broader audience. And then at the Disney Investor Day, we learned that there's also going to be a television series that takes place at the end of the High Republic era. So not necessarily overlapping with the books that we're getting now, but maybe everything in the High Republic publishing is going to build up to what we'll see in the TV show called The Acolyte. I'm not sure. They haven't really clarified that, but they have said that will be much later in the High Republic timeline. But yeah, as far as we know, it is publishing and then a TV series as well.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but everything essentially starts off with this book here, Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I got a copy too. I just got it in the mail yesterday.
Okay. Well, I have a copy of the first 100 pages of it.
This is coming to you at some point because you like having books, but here you
I did read the whole book digitally, but then prior to that, I read the first 100 pages in printed form. Yeah, so the Light of the Jedi is basically the first thing you want to read as an introduction to the High Republic because it establishes a few things. It sets up the major conflict, this thing called the Great Disaster, which is covered in this first 100 pages, and the major nemesis, the antagonists of the story, the Nile, which are established here, and we figure out, like, we see how their hierarchy works and their leadership and why they pose a threat to the Republic and the Jedi.
And Charles is known for his Star Wars comic work. I mean, he's written other novels, but he's had a successful run in the comic books too, right?
Yeah, so Charles Soule has written a lot of my favorite Star Wars comics from the current canon. He did a Darth Vader run called Dark Lord of the Sith, which took place between episodes 3 and 4. That was great. He did Rise of Kylo Ren last year, which was also really wonderful. Right now he's writing the main Star Wars title for Marvel, which is really, really good as well. And he's done, I think he did a Lando series previously, a mini series. And like you said, he's written his own stuff as well. He has his own comics and his own novels. But yeah, I think he's a great writer. He really understands Star Wars, and he was a great choice, I think, to write the kind of launch title for Light of the Jedi. I'm a big fan, and I've gotten to chat with him briefly twice now, so I'm super excited about him kind of taking point on this project.
And I guess here's where I get a little confused. So this is the first adult novel, but you don't have to read this to read the other ones, right? Because it would be weird to make you read an adult novel to read a kid's novel, right? I mean, am I missing something?
I would recommend that anyone who wants to get into the High Republic read this book. Unless you're like a 8-year-old, then maybe you just want to read the Justina Ireland book, and I think you'd be able to follow it. It's not like it relies heavily on the events of this book, but they do refer back to this thing called the Great Disaster, which is a key plot element in this book that kind of sets the ball rolling on all of the High Republic. So I think this is probably going to be your starting point if you want to read any of this stuff. Again, unless you're very young.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting. Like, obviously, there's people who might. I mean, for adult fans who want to get the whole thing.
Yeah.
But there might be kids who want to read, because there's even a kid's book, like a literal kid's book, where
Yeah, and I think that kind of thing would be a great way to introduce younger readers to the concept of the Jedi and what the Jedi were all about. For so many years growing up, the Jedi in my head were this long extinct order, religion, or whatever, and that was how they existed in Star Wars, this thing that you would look back on. But now they did it a little bit in the prequel trilogy, obviously, before the Clone Wars broke out and things got crazy. But this is the Jedi as I think they were intended to operate in harmony with the Republic and stuff. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different take on that.
So we talked about the adult book, but they're also releasing I guess a children's book, is children's novel. I'm not familiar with all the terminology, but A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland.
I just got this in the mail this week. Previously, they had sent me the preview advance copy, which was pretty much finished, but then this is like the hardcover version of A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland, which is middle grade, which is what, ages 8 to 12, something like that. And this follows a group of younger characters, 2 of which are Padawans. I actually like this character here. Vernestra Rowe is her name, and she's just been made a Jedi Knight. So she's like on the very, very young side of the spectrum of the ages where you would be able to graduate into being a Jedi Knight. And then this guy is still a Padawan. But then there are other young characters who are not Force sensitive who go along in this adventure in a droid. And they encounter a disaster on a smaller scale than in Light of the Jedi, and they end up stranded on a a moon, kind of a jungle moon, where there's other dangers and stuff that they encounter and have to deal with and survive. And it's I called it in my review. I called it like a bottle episode, where you're just putting a bunch of these characters together and see how they like bounce off each other. And it's really a more intimate story than the other High Republic stories I've read so far, and it's really just about kind of getting to know these characters, and like I said, a good way I think for younger readers to know what Jedi are all about. It introduces the themes of what it is to be a Jedi Knight.
And obviously, it's a more accessible book, but I wouldn't say it's inappropriate for an adult to read. I think an adult would still enjoy it. It's not as verbose as an adult novel, but it's by no means a kiddie book.
It's a very quick read. I got through this in like a day or so. Yeah. So you can get through this real quick. But yeah, I think adults would enjoy it as an ancillary story to High Republic.
Speaking of kids' books, though, they do have The Great Jedi Rescue, written by Cavan Scott, which is features looks like a Wookiee Jedi and some other folks there.
An Ithorian Jedi. Like Doc Ondar.
Right, exactly. So this is a kid's book. It includes stickers. So this is, I'm presuming, pretty self-contained and accessible.
I have not seen this. I haven't read this, but yeah, it has stickers in it, and it's by Cavan Scott.
Yeah,
who also wrote. He's writing the comic that we're going to talk about in a bit.
And then he also, I believe, is writing the next adult novel. So he's not necessarily what I would call a children's book author. Exclusionary of other things.
Yeah, so it seems like what they're doing is they've got these 5 authors who are the main contributors to the High Republic, and they're just going to be rotating like their roles in each phase. Like in this phase 1, Charles Soule got the adult novel, Justina Ireland got the middle grade novel, Claudia Gray got the young adult novel, and I think they're all going to swap around next time, where Cavan Scott, who's writing the comic book, is going to write the adult novel, and so forth like that. So they'll just kind of rotate through those roles.
So then those books all come out on Tuesday, like books do, but on Wednesday, because that's Comic Book Day, we're getting the first issue of the Marvel series, which is conveniently named Star Wars: The High Republic. And the logline here is, as the frontier prepares for the dedication of the majestic Starlight Beacon, Padawan Keeve Trennis faces the ultimate choice. Will she complete her Jedi trials or rescue the innocent from disaster? New Jedi, new ships, new evils to fight. It's definitely got that Stanley like ballyhoo, but there you go. You got your concept there, right?
Yeah. So they sent me. This is like a preview of the comic book. It's got some black and white art, and it's got some excerpts from the script in it. Here you can see that. But it's not complete, so I haven't read through the complete first issue, which comes out January 6th. But I've been looking forward to checking that out when it's finished.
What's interesting to me about this is that books can usually come out twice a year, 3 times a year when you're in a series, but comic books come out monthly. So we already have the cover for issue number 2 with even more ballyhooed verbiage there. But
so you could see that this is kind of going to give you a taste of how this all kind of overlaps, because this Jedi is a Trandoshan species, and his name is Skeer, Skeer, I think. And in one of the novels, he loses his arm. So you can see how that's going to carry over into the comic books there. But that species can grow back their limbs, so it won't be gone forever.
Good for him. But at least takes 2 issues.
Right.
And then also coming in February, it's comics, so we don't have an exact date, is Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures from IDW, which is a more youthful focused comic book line. And you got a little preview there.
The preview that they sent me of that, kind of a similar thing where it was a sample of the art and the text, the scripts and stuff. This is written by Daniel Jose Older, who's written a bunch of... all these authors have worked in Star Wars before, so they kind of picked people that they knew they could rely on, and they knew were passionate about the subject matter and stuff.
So I noticed this features Master Yoda. Does Master Yoda appear throughout the High Republic, or is this?
He is mentioned. He's mentioned at least once in all the novels that I've read. He shows up briefly in one of the other novels. I don't remember exactly which one. I want to say it was Light of the Jedi. He shows up briefly at the end, but he is a major player. I know in the High Republic Adventures comic book, and Yoda is so far the only known character that has popped up from previous eras of Star Wars.
And then finally, they just announced that The Rising Storm is the next novel, as we mentioned, written by Kevin Scott. There's the cover art, no synopsis, no other information except that it's coming out July 6th, 2021. So you have about 6 months to read all of the first wave of the High Republic before the next installment is released by our friends at Del Rey.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Kevin Scott seems like a cool guy, and I think I read his Count Dooku book, but that was like an audio drama kind of thing, so it was not prose. But I'm interested to read this by him. I haven't read anything like that he's written before.
So you had a chance to talk to the authors, as we mentioned, and you can listen to the whole thing on Who's the Boss, and it's fantastic. And there's some deep, if you want to super analyze some of the things said, it can get very interesting. I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but I don't want to spoil that. But what did you get the sense from the authors about how they feel about this project?
I think that they're all, I don't know, when you watch that video of them all coming together and having that big meeting with the story group and coming up with the premise, I guess. And I was actually talking about this with my wife earlier because they talk about how, you know, the Skywalker saga had just ended and they were talking about what's the next step? Where do we go from here in Star Wars? And I always say in the last year, I've said like, oh, this is actually a really exciting time for Star Wars because we're not in a period where we have to protect anything. You know, like there was always that era between episodes 6 and 7 where you know we couldn't really explore what was going on in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens because, you know, J.J. Abrams might touch on that in the next movie or whatever. But now we don't have to worry about that. Anybody can do, as long as they're all working together, which I hope that they are, anybody can cover anything that they want to. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that these guys, all the authors that came together to do the High Republic, are excited about this project for that very reason. I think it feels very freeing, especially considering that this particular example takes place so far removed from the other stories that they can just kind of do whatever, and it's not going to necessarily have to affect other stuff that we see later on down the line as much.
As long as they don't kill Yoda and destroy the galaxy.
Yeah, that would be weird. If Yoda died in the High Republic, we'd all be scratching our heads and waiting to hear the explanation.
Then there'd be a 6-part Disney Plus series explaining it all to us.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that I think is interesting is when we first heard about this initiative, it was really outside of The Mandalorian and the Cassian Andor series, back when it was called Project Luminous as a code name, you know, we kind of felt like this was where Star Wars was going to live for the foreseeable future. There'd be a couple shows, but this was going to be the big sort of content initiative. And, you know, it's supposed to come out in August, but, you know, well before the second season of Mandalorian. But now, after what happened, you know, last week, I'm worried that it lost some of its thunder with all the knowledge that all the Star Wars content's coming out. Now, we don't know when, but with 10 new Star Wars series or 9 new Star Wars series, depending on who you ask, do you feel that the light of the High Republic is diminished a little bit because it's been overshadowed by just so much other Star Wars content?
No, if anything, I feel like there's going to be more attention brought to it because of the TV show that got announced. But this other thing that I've been saying is that I always think back to the role-playing game, the Star Wars role-playing game from Fantasy Flight that's been going for like 5 years or so. But they divided Star Wars into 3 subcategories, basically. So they had one mini game within the larger game that's all about the Jedi, and they have one that's all about the military part of Star Wars, and there's one that's all about my favorite part, which is like the underbelly crime world and scum and villainy and the smugglers and the bounty hunters and everything. And that to me is what they're going for with the broader picture of all this content, is that they want to cover all those bases at the same time. You know, the High Republic's going to give us the Jedi, which have never been the most interesting thing about Star Wars to me. It's an element of it in my head, but when I think of Star Wars, I don't immediately think of a lightsaber like a lot of people do. So I know that's probably unusual, but I do think like High Republic covers the Jedi. That's great. And then you got something like Rogue Squadron, which is going to cover the military side. And then you've got the Mandalorian, which is, again, the part that I'm the most interested in, the people working in the seedy underbelly of the galaxy. And I think if you look at all the projects that spread out, they all kind of equally cover those 3, I don't know what you would call it. It's not quadrants because there's not 4 of them, but you know what I mean.
So with that being said, you know, you've sort of been well on the record of saying, you know, that the height of the Jedi was not the most interesting thing to you about Star Wars. But now that you've read 3 of the High Republic books, you know, what's your thought on it? Do you think they found a way to make it interesting, or is it still, you know, I mean, from episode 1 to episode 5 on the spectrum, where would you rate this?
That was a big concern for me going in, and the analogy that I always use, not to go back to role playing again, but if you're building a party in a role playing game, you don't want all of your characters to be mages. You want to have a mage who's gonna use magic and be able to heal you and stuff, and then you want like a brute character who's got power, and you've got, you know, all sorts of different classes of characters, and that's what keeps it interesting. When you look at the original Star Wars film, you know, each character represents a different type of character, you know what I'm saying? And then in the High Republic, so many of the main characters are Jedi that I was worried that they were going to seem bland kind of across the board for that reason. And there's a little bit of that. And again, we're still like at the very beginning, but I think that they have found ways to make that more interesting. And there are other types of characters in the mix in the Claudia Gray novel Into the Dark, which we didn't really talk about. We kind of skipped over it, but there are like ship pilots that the Jedi hire that end up becoming kind of like part of the team and stuff like that. And they said in that video, we're going to meet some bounty hunters and stuff like that. So I think that they know what they're doing, and they know how to keep that mixture interesting. And yeah, they have found interesting things to do with the Jedi that I wouldn't spoil here. And they have found interesting things to do with the villains, because I had similar worries about the villains when they first talked about the Nile. Like, they just seemed like, okay, they're just marauders basically, or pirates, but that's how they're introduced at the beginning of Light of the Jedi, the first novel. But by the end, I think you'll have a better idea. By the end of that first novel, you have a better idea of how that faction of enemies is going to evolve, and their relationship with the Jedi and how they're manipulating the Jedi is going to evolve in an interesting way. So yeah, I think that they are finding compelling things to do with both of those groups.
And I'm sorry we passed by Claudia Gray. I must have screwed up, but she has a young adult novel, right?
Yeah, this is actually my favorite.
Coming out in February.
Yeah, this was my favorite of the 3 full-length novels I've read so far. And they call it a young adult book, but it's written at an adult level, I would say, just as much as the Charles Soule book is. And that's just, Claudia Gray is a really, really strong writer. Probably my favorite novelist working in Star Wars these days, outside of like Timothy Zahn. But she's had some great Star Wars novels so far. But this one is fairly self-contained, although it does refer back to the Great Disaster and the ramifications of that. but it's kind of its own like offshoot adventure. I do want to say, without spoiling too much, that it has a very interesting tie-in to recent Star Wars storytelling that I wasn't expecting, and had me excited that they're doing stuff like that as well. And it also introduces another faction of enemies that are not the Nile, that they have revealed in concept art and stuff. But again, I don't want to spoil too much about that either. But they're a cool, different group of enemies that the Jedi have to go up against.
Well, great. Well, thanks. Do you have any final thoughts on the High Republic before we move on?
I'm really curious to see where it goes, and they said it's going to take a few years to get through the whole project. So I guess they've got this planned out. I don't know how many like phases or waves of books we're going to get, or how long the comic is planned to last for. But yeah, especially now that we know about the TV series, I'm very curious to see what the grand plan for all of this is. And I think that even knowing that all these people were working together and planning out the broader story beats is good to know, because I think that is one of the big mistakes that was made with the sequel trilogy. And I hope Lucasfilm is learning from that. Like, have, even if it's a collective of people, have people in charge, have people planning things out and knowing where things are going, I guess.
I feel like I agree with you. It's you have to straddle that line. I think Marvel does it exceptionally, where you let people make movies, and you don't want to tell them what movie to make, but you give them, their box and you let them do what they're going to do. But you do have executives there who are saying, and executives in the broadest sense of the word, story executives or what have you, being like, okay, so this is what we want to accomplish with this, that then will feed into this, with spreadsheets and everything. So you don't just suddenly see a movie that undoes, something that was established that you were supposed to care about, which I think is, like it or not, I think it's pretty clear that episode 7 and 9 were done by the same guy, and episode 8 was done by someone different. And, it's nice to see them, I think in the Investor Day, it came across like they have a plan. And, I think that, you can talk about it whether you love the plan or hate the plan, but at least there's a plan and you're not going to get whiplash.
Right.
So that's the High Republic, but we got Mike here, so we're going to do the rest of our usuals, where we're talking a little bit about what we're looking forward to on LP and then what we're looking for Disney. Monday, tomorrow, Mike has the season finale live on YouTube of Who's the Boss, our Star Wars podcast, which Mike does a fantastic job with. What's your plan there, Mike?
I invited back everyone who has been on the show more than once to appear on this episode. Not everybody can make it, but the people that we've got are all great and should be fun. We're going to dissect the season finale of The Mandalorian and talk about whatever news. I think we're expecting a little bit of news tomorrow morning, so we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, we got, while we've been on the air, every Star Wars Twitter account that I know, internal, Disney branded, is talking about, make sure you're watching GMA tomorrow, where Jon Favreau is going to be a guest. I think we all have questions that came out of the finale, and I think we might get a little bit of answers before we get Disney Gallery next week. But I look forward. You did a great you had a great episode last week, and I'm looking forward to watching your stream tomorrow with your fellow Star Wars fans, to give me a little bit more of a casual fan a perspective of what happened, because my mind was blown. Although, do you mind if I give you a little inside baseball with Mike here? So we had a special Slack channel just for Mando conversation, so someone could we could talk about it without spoiling it. You'd mute the channel and then unmute it. And so we're talking about what happened at the post-credit scene, and Mike's like, "What are you talking about?"
Well, I'll give you even more inside baseball. So, like, I watched the episode as soon as I got up. It was like 7 a.m. or something, and then as soon as the credits hit, I logged on to Slack, and I saw you guys talking about this, and the credits are like still rolling. I'm like, what do you mean? How do we cover this? I don't understand. And then as I asked the question, not even a response or anything, as I asked a question, the screen cut to the twin sons of Tatooine. Not to spoil too much. I don't know if we care, but yeah, you can continue where you left off.
Well, it's funny because I was watching it, and after normally I don't watch the credits after like the big names went by because it's small and you can't. I'm not going to read everything, but after the Wing Chao extravaganza we had, I was like, I want to see a list of everyone who appeared in the episode. And then it said it appeared. It had like the also featuring, and then it said Jedi double or somebody, presumably someone who was playing Luke. But then it said Bid Fortuna, and I was like, I don't know who that is. It sounds like a name I've heard, but I don't remember anyone showing up after Luke Skywalker. I mean, outside of R2-D2. And I was like, and so I made Alex pause, and I was like, what? Like, did I miss something? And then I was like, never mind, just play it. And and then I was like going to go on Slack and be like, what did I miss? And then the tag came on with Disney legend Ming-Na and Bubba. So I'm looking forward to that. Also on Wednesday, we have our annual Festivus celebration, which Kyle always does a great job with. And then on Christmas Eve, not only will we be getting ready for Christmas, but it's also Aristocats' 50th anniversary. So Tony will be doing his patented deep dive into perhaps the last Disney, like when it came to Disney canon, that was the last Disney movie I saw before, library title when I was a kid, and have almost no recollection of it. So I look forward to learning about it. So at the end, we always talk about our highlight from last week, and then our highlight, what we're anticipating most for next week. So I'm going to let Mike go first for last week. What was your highlight?
Are we good with having some Mando spoilers in this, or?
Yeah, we're okay. Too late now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the moment that really got to me then was Din removing his helmet in front of Grogu. I think that they really sold the emotion of that, especially after all we've seen them go through together. And the rest of the episode was so exciting, but that was really the emotional core of that for me. So that really worked in my book.
Yeah, I agree with you, because you look back and you think like the nerd in me, once you see the green lightsaber and the clubbed hand, you're like, oh my gosh, that's gonna be the highlight of the episode. But it really wasn't. And that's a kudos to Peyton Reed and I think and Jon Favreau, who were able to make the emotional moment the true highlight for characters that we don't have 40 years of history with.
Yeah, and people complain that a lot of this second season of The Mandalorian was a lot of fan service and stuff being brought back from the past of Star Wars, but exactly what you were saying, I care just as much, if not more, about the relationship between these new characters that we had never seen before this series. So yeah, I think they did a great job on serving both those purposes.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with fan service, I think, as long as it doesn't detract from the main through line you're trying to say. Yeah. And in this case, what happened made sense based on where they were sending it. So like it wasn't like it just came out of the blue. Like what?
Right.
So my highlight from last week, I wasn't gonna pick something Star Wars because I was gonna let Mike have that one. But the Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse episode, Just the Four of Us, is fantastic. It's done as Daisy and Donald are just tired of spending time with Mickey and Minnie. So they tell Mickey and Minnie that they can't go out tonight. They're sick. Well, of course, Mickey and Minnie, being Mickey and Minnie, then decide they were going to come over and take care of Donald and Daisy, despite their desire to just stay alone. And they use every horror trope in the book. So you see, as they're trying to prevent Mickey and Minnie from entering their house, and they close the door, and then suddenly the door opens, and there's Mickey's silhouette. It was just hilarious because it's horror, but it's Mickey Mouse.
I haven't seen that one yet. I've seen up through the roller disco one, but I haven't watched past that, so I have to catch up.
And next, what are you looking forward to most next week?
I'm really excited to see Soul. I want to see Soul on Christmas Day. We're going to watch that. So I'm a big Pixar fan, and I will enjoy it, I think.
I think you will too. I I went with a sentimental pick. To me, Christmas growing up was the Disney Parks Christmas Day Parade. Obviously, there's no parade this year, but ABC is doing their Disney Parks Magical Christmas Celebration. And to me, that just makes the holiday. They're not good shows as like if you were a broadcasting major at UCLA, but they're just hokey and fun, and they work on Christmas. You will get a sneak peek of Soul, which will already be out. WandaVision and the Ratatouille attraction, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure at Epcot. So it will look forward a little bit, and I think we're all looking forward to look forward. So our next episode will be next Sunday, 7 p.m. We're going to reveal our annual list of the 10 most fascinating people as determined solely by me at the Walt Disney Company. So before then, we will reveal the 9 most fascinating, and then we'll do our most fascinating. We'll reveal it next Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, right here. So see if you can guess who they're going to be. Probably not, maybe. But we'll see. So any final words of wisdom, Mike? You're going to get ready to watch Good Morning America tomorrow?
I'm going to do my third rewatch of... I guess my second rewatch, but my third watch overall of the finale of Mandalorian. Take my notes for tomorrow's conversation. I don't know if I'm going to be getting up that early to watch GMA.
Well, it doesn't matter because it'll be online by the time you wake up because we don't live on the East Coast, so no, I wouldn't wake up for it. But but we do expect some exciting Mandalorian news, and since we're talking Star Wars, don't forget the Disney Gallery for Mandalorian Season 2 1-hour special will debut on Christmas too. So whether you want to watch Burrow, Soul, or Disney Gallery, you got a full day of entertainment for you.
And I'll have a recap up fairly early that morning as well.
Working Christmas Day. That's the kind of dedication.
Not even Ebenezer Scrooge made his employee work on Christmas Day.
I'd like to point out I didn't make Mike work on Christmas Day. That was my. They announce it, and I go. I think I text Mike. So, how do we want to handle this?
I volunteered. I will happily watch that and recap it.
So thanks so much for giving us a look into the High Republic, kind of on a book by book basis. I think it was a little overwhelming. There's so much coming out, but I
hope people check it out. I hope people enjoy it. I am enjoying it so far.
Okay, our next show will be actually your show tomorrow at 1:30. Then we got Parks Talk at 4, followed by Movie Club with Big. You got a full day of you're like Rebecca Mosley on tomorrow. And then Tuesday we got Barely Necessities, followed by Disney Trivia Live. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.